Hello, you're very welcome to the NFL show here on the Under Center podcast. Dara here with you, of course. Delighted to be joined by Fionn this evening. The gruesome twosome is going at it because the rest of the lads can't be bothered to do it. One guy has a valid excuse, and that'd be Alex. Congratulations to Alex, who is now a proud dad of two after young Patter was born last week. So congratulations to Alex and his lovely wife Kathy as well. Patter's a great name, because it's UC Patter, under center Patter. So it's good.
Yeah.
He obviously has taken the show into consideration when naming his children, and that's all I can ask for on when it comes to just naming your children.
Yeah, look, as well, though, you have to take into account there is the very strong Dundalk accent. So, for all we know, we've only seen it written down. He might go Pjatter. We don't know yet. But Pjatter, Patter, whatever they want to do, it's going to be interesting. We're delighted to have one extra fan. We've noticed the views have already ticked up. So, he must be watching it with the baby on his lap, I'm hoping.
Well, I can already confirm as well that he has been signed to the Mavericks. Ty Henry has already recruited him for
I'm not surprised
for season 2042.
Yeah, Mr. Henry loves a bit of recruitment, all right. All the teams he's been around have had a serious uptick in social media push in terms of getting bodies down. So I'm not surprised that old Pjatter's got signed up pretty nice and quickly and get that out of the way and start going for rookie month. I think then is next on the agenda for the Mavericks.
Yeah. By that stage, I think Alex will be in his maybe final year of playing, so he might get one more year playing just to keep his son around. He'll be the LeBron James and Bronny of the AFI.
LeBron James is right, yeah. LeBron James of Dundalk.
So is that like LeBron James? Would it be? LeBron?
I think they just I think it's more like Kevin Harp instead of Kevin Hart. New ad that they have. I think that's the only way to make that connection, to be honest. There's not a further man from LeBron James in Ireland is Mr. Alex Sims. So we'll have to go that way around. I don't think we're going to get a nice, clever connection in this one, to be honest.
Oh, Jesus. Well, not with that attitude, we're not going to anyway, Phil, for fuck's sake.
You gotta cut your losses, right? No one wants to sit to lads riffing on a podcast for 20 minutes trying to come up with a funny name that everyone in the world knows we're not funny enough to come up with anyway.
Yeah. I didn't have the time today to write the script for something funny, so I guess I'm gonna have to keep it for next week for sure. But you weren't around last week.
Nope.
You obviously had better things to do instead of coming on the show. More along the lines of your partner decided not to have keys to get into their apartment, which is great.
Yes.
So, but it's been 2 weeks since you've been on. So, is there anything taking or grabbing your attention, I should say, before we get into the big news of the day, which we will, of course, which is the firing of Robert Saleh? But over the last 2 weeks, is there any sort of thing, any storyline that has grabbed your attention as well?
The biggest thing that's grabbed my attention is maybe the lack of a gigantic storyline. Obviously, with some breaking news to talk about today, but the way I'm going is in terms of the chaos. I think there has been no really clear front runners. The Chiefs have looked vulnerable, even if they haven't lost. The Vikings look like the best team in the league, but they don't have that aura of invincibility around them, or at least that's my impression from my standpoint. So I've kind of enjoyed it over the last couple of weeks. A few surprise victories, way more last week than the week before. So I think it's interesting. It makes it hard on our end, a lot of pontificating, a lot of kind of guesswork going on. But ultimately, in terms of watching the football, I think chaos is much better as long as it's some other fan base that's suffering and not your own. You want your own fan base to have a nice, consistent season. But at any time we can get a few upsets, a few strange results here or there, it's more interesting for us, and it gives us something to talk about, right? Something that we can kind of dig our teeth into, try and postulate what way it's going to fall. Does this mean this? Does it mean that? I personally, we all know where the waffles are coming from, even at the professional level. It makes things more difficult and at the same time more interesting. So that's the big thing that stood out to me over the last 2 weeks, is that we've got a close season. Might not be the best football season ever, but it's close. And anytime you've upsets, it's a lot easier to watch. It's a lot more fun to watch week in and week out.
Perfect. Let's get on to the biggest news then today. Of course, the firing of Robert Saleh as head coach of the New York Jets. Uh, Surprising, maybe expected at the end of the year, maybe not expected in the end of week 5. Obviously, the owner Woody Johnson decided that after Sunday's performance against the Vikings, that was all he needed to see in terms of Robert Saleh, who had one more year left on his deal after this season, and starting the season 2 and 3 was not good enough to keep him going for at least another couple of weeks, if not the rest of the season. But Dion, your initial reaction to seeing the news, apart from the group chat where you just, I think, laughed for most of it.
Yeah, I think that was my initial reaction. I was quite surprised, though, to be perfectly honest with you. Like you said, it hasn't been the best start to the season for the New York Jets, but at the same time, you've got Aaron Rodgers coming back from a season-long injury, right? He's going to need time to warm up. The defense is not playing particularly badly. I think they're a top 10 defense in terms of yards allowed. So there's been good signs, and I think what really has cost them here is when the defense is playing well and you're a defensive-minded coach and the offense is struggling. I think there is where the ownership maybe, or perhaps Mr. GM Aaron Rodgers, as I suspect, is probably pulling the strings here. It's getting a little bit grumpy and didn't necessarily have a lot of faith in Robert Saleh's offensive mindedness in order to be able to turn this ship around. I think they're going to be most disappointed if you're a Jets fan with obviously the output of Aaron Rodgers, but on a more independent note, I think that makes sense, right? You even at 40 or younger, you've been out for a year and an entire year, you're rehabbing a leg. You're not necessarily getting the same amount of practice reps, training reps across the season and across the off season as well. So I do think that's going to lend itself to a slow start. Garrett Wilson hasn't leapt out, and they've been struggling to get some of the other bits and pieces in that wide receiver room. They've been extremely disappointing at running back. I think Breece Hall and Braylon Allen are two excellent talents that just have not got the ground. I think they're the second last in the league in terms of rush yards per game. And that's not going to cut it. And it puts a lot of pressure on the offense then when you are trying to warm Aaron Rodgers up and get him back in and feeling his body, as I'm sure he is at 40 odd years of age. Not being able to rely on the run game, and consequently, typically, that is a symptom of offensive line play as well. So that's not helping at all the offense. And I think ultimately that's what it's come down to, right? If there's real true belief that the offense is suffering, I think it's most likely down to Robert Saleh's background in the defensive side that are making the front office and the head office maybe a little bit worried about the potential to turn this thing around. And so they're going to make a change quickly. What I question is, where is the benefit in this? Okay, Saleh's struggling, but it's not like there's an automatic free agent, let's say, out in the market that you can immediately sign up that you reckon is going to turn things around. And we obviously don't have Al on today. He's kind of the expert in offensive and coaching side of things. But
There is
I
one.
wonder who the options are. Bill Belichick, I guess. Is that who you're going to?
Yeah.
I don't know. He seems to be really enjoying his time on the pundit panels, to be honest with you. I've seen him on every show. He's on every podcast. He's on every pre-game show. He's got a midweek show breaking down tape with Chad Ochocinco and everybody. He's loving
I don't
it.
know. I don't know if he's loving the podcast and the show so much. I think he's loving the fact that he has a nice new 23-year-old girlfriend.
Yeah. And he kept the dog, I believe. The wife didn't
Did he
get
keep
the
the
dog.
dog?
So, I think so.
He kept the dog.
So he's kind of winning on all ends. But yeah, I think that's the biggest question for me, Darren. I'm interested to see what you think because you have a better handle sometimes on this coaching landscape as it is. Where's the benefit here? What's the big change that's going to happen now that Saleh's out? Is there a quarterback whisperer on the market? Who's the offensive coordinator, do you know, for the Jets? Is it
Nathaniel Hackett?
So he's not going to be the head coach anyway because he just
because he was obviously unanimously fired from his head coaching role in Denver, which was a total mess up. But the defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, is going to be the interim head coach for the time being. The Jets released a statement about 3 hours ago from owner Woody Johnson, and he says, "This morning I informed Robert Saleh that he will no longer serve as the head coach of the Jets. I thanked him for his hard work these past 3.5 years and wished him and his family well moving forward. This was not an easy decision, but we are not where we should. We are not where we should be given, our expectations. And I believe now is the best time for us to move in a different direction. Jeff Ulbrich will serve as the interim head coach for the remainder of the season. He's a tough coach who has the respect of the coaches and players on the team. I believe he, along with the coaches on his staff, can get the most out of our talented team and attain the goals we established this offseason. Interesting that they're not going to make a move this year for a permanent head coach. So Jeff Ulbrich will be the interim head coach for the remainder of the season. It'll be interesting to see if things take a downturn, even more of a downturn in Woody Johnson's eyes. Would he continue in that role? He said it was not an easy decision, but we're not where we should be given our expectations. I find that interesting as well. If you look at the tenure of Robert Saleh, he had Aaron Rodgers last year. Aaron Rodgers gets injured 3 snaps. He has to go with Zach Wilson, who was never the option last year. He had Zach Wilson the previous year, so they weren't happy with before as well. I think this was the first year he had a healthy Aaron Rodgers. And with him being a defensive head coach, I'm assuming that he was given all the offensive duties to Nathaniel Hackett, saying, listen, this is your baby. You run with it. I've given you full control. There's Nathaniel Hackett being Aaron Rodgers' boy in that sense. For them to struggle, I think you put up ironically enough, you put up the stat in their group chat earlier on today before any of this news about the Jets have scored the same number of points at this point this season as they had last season when they had Zach Wilson on their center, which the common thing between them is, yes, the head coach, but also, yes, the offensive coordinator. So, is Nathaniel Hackett have nothing to answer for in this scenario, which I think he should. You've got to think Aaron Rodgers has had some influence on the decision. Absolutely. That I think, what was it? Was it the game that they played against the Patriots? And I think Robert Saleh tried to go in for a hug with Aaron Rodgers and he pushed him away. So obviously maybe their relationship is not great, and the upper brass of the Jets are deciding that we're going with the quarterback instead of going with the head coach. It's a tough choice. Do you go with the 40-year-old quarterback who looked every bit of his age last Sunday? Or do you go with the underperforming head coach that you're not too sure whether or not he is the right guy to take the team forward? It's a tough choice. They've gone with the quarterback. They better pray to whatever deity they believe in that it works, because you think it's bad now. If Robert Saleh wasn't the problem and there was other people in that organization that were the problem, it's going to get a whole lot worse, a whole lot quickly, a whole lot worse, a whole lot sooner for the Jets and the Jets family.
Yeah, and the question comes back again is, where is the advantage? If it is a problem on offense, and I maintain that it is, because I just looked up the stats there, the Jets are number 2 in yards per game allowed to opponents and number 2 in pass yards per game opponents. Robert Saleh's background is the defense, famously from the 49ers. He's brought that over and they're playing well on defense. Offensively, as I said, Rodgers is coming back from a long-term injury. Anyone expected a 40-year-old quarterback ever to hit the ground running, going full speed after such a long break out? It's just not going to happen. Now, the question is how much of that is on Aaron Rodgers' fault, and we've been discussing in our chat that it probably is time that he hit the cliff, and certainly in terms of that playmaking ability that he always used to have, I'd say a lot of that is gone. He did navigate the pocket quite well, but what he's going to need to rely on more than ever is being on the same page with his wide receivers. And I don't pretend to be an offensive guru. I definitely was not a top-tier quarterback, and I don't know the game like that, but I've listened to enough commentators talk about games that Aaron Rodgers has played in that his receivers are not on the same page. And that's not just not making catches. That is live in-game reps, option routes where certain things, certain sight keys are present, that Aaron Rodgers is seeing one thing and the wide receiver is seeing something else and doing something else. Aaron Rodgers has always benefited from that, and now more than ever being slightly more contained and less athletic than he was before, even if it's just as the injury continues to rehab. He's going to need that. So to place that blame on the coach is tough. And then again, I think it comes back to, if that is where you want to place your blame, why are you getting rid of a defense-minded coach and putting the defensive coordinator in as the head coach again? If the problem is coaching on the offensive side, how does that improve the offensive coaching? Is kind of the roundabout way to say. I suspect as well, I remember from watching Hard Knocks that the owner is a very involved owner. He's a David Tepper type. He comes and speaks to the team and hangs around the facilities a lot during the offseason. That worries me. I think this is a snap decision. This is a head office as opposed to a front office change. And that's what worries me. I don't think things are going to look that much better for the Jets. But before I hand it back to you as well, the weird thing for me is there, and what you, in the statement you read out, is we're not where we expected to be. And aside from an ugly loss to the Broncos where they only put up 9 points, if you told me Jets preseason with a top tier Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson playing as well as he should, and the defense being a number 2 defense in the league, if you telling me they lost the game to the 49ers, they lost the game to the 4-0 Vikings, and then they beat the Patriots and they beat the Titans, I would not have blinked an eye at that. The only one that stands out to me is the Broncos. So I'm wondering, is there maybe a little bit of an overaction? Of course, you have to actually perform the eye test. But if you're looking at pure schedule, they're not that far behind where you might have put them playing the win-loss game. So I don't know why all of a sudden they must feel this problem on the offensive side of the ball is so dire and needs any kind of change whatsoever, that just Robert Saleh has had way too much time and proved that he cannot make the changes that the ownership or the rest of the team or the locker room believes need to be made. That's the only reason they had to get rid of him, because other than that, it doesn't really make sense. Like you said, sure, long-term, 2 seasons, did he underperform? Was he underwhelmed? You let him go. Fine. Mid-season, it's chaotic. It doesn't always galvanize the team, and it can be very hard to patch that hole once you've punched through the hole. And I think that's what they've done now. And I'm a little bit nervous if I'm a Jets fan.
Yeah. The things that come to mind on that as well, with this, and they're using Robert Saleh obviously as the reason to blame for the Jets downturn, but it wasn't Robert Saleh's fault that the team traded for Hassan Reddick, didn't give him a new contract, and he's been sitting out every game this year. Who I'm guessing, if Hassan Reddick was going to come in, he was going to be a vital part of that defense, especially how
But the
good.
defense is not the problem.
But just I'm on a train.
Sure, go for it. Sorry, yeah.
Well, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was GM, that was owner that are refusing to meet his demands. It wasn't Robert Saleh who threw 3 ugly interceptions on Sunday against the Vikings, including that horrible pick 6, and then that also obviously the interception at the end of the game to finish it. I actually thought as well during the game, I was watching it on Sunday, was finally Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers were actually starting to get that connection that everyone was hoping for at the start of the year, and maybe things were going to take a step forward. So, it's very easy to look at the record and look at the team and say it's the head coach's fault, but there's so many other factors there. And like you're saying, with how poorly the offense is playing and how poorly the likes of Breece Hall has been running, in terms of that's an O-line issue as well, and that's a scheme issue that maybe this is the reason why Nathaniel Hackett is not interim head coach right now as well, is that there is issues on offense, and I don't think he's the man to be taking on everything when he has to sort out his own house first, and maybe look at that as someone that should be looked at being moved on. But again, I'm guessing that's an Aaron Rodgers decision that is influencing, an Aaron Rodgers wish that's influencing that decision. So it's tough. And look, we said it tonight, we said it multiple times about Robert Saleh and the fact that maybe he was on borrowed time in New York anyway. But I generally hope to see him back soon, maybe back in a defensive coordinator position, because when he was with the 49ers, that was one of the most dominant defenses that the 49ers have had when he was there. So we'll see. Hopefully, maybe something will happen there. In terms of like who's going to be the head coach now next year, Bill Belichick is one. You'll always get these offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators that have really good seasons that are going to be touted. Ben Johnson at the Lions has been touted for the last couple of years and has refused to move. I can't remember the guy's name at the Texans. He was mooted as well as one too. Um, but the Jets as an organization plagued with bad decisions and they continue to make bad decisions. So we'll see. One conspiracy theorist, no, I don't know if you've seen this or read into this or maybe give it any credence at all. But what I noticed that was on um, Robert Saleh's sleeve on Sunday.
Yes, there was a very prominent flag that
Very
goes
prominent
against a lot of
flag.
the political current in the US. Yes, I did notice that flag as
Yeah,
well. I assumed that is though a heritage-based flag as opposed to a political statement. No, that was my
possibly.
understanding. Similar to of course, probably not without an undertone, but
Yeah,
similar to kind of the flag that the Croatian flag Belichick was seen wearing the last couple of times. It's in the same spot. It looks the same.
yeah.
That was my opinion. I didn't
His
know necessarily if it was
his yeah,
political
his
stuff.
roots do trace back to Lebanon, but it's not something that he's shown. And considering the week that has gone on in
Mm-hmm.
Lebanon as well is very interesting.
And
With especially with Woody Johnson as key prominent a figure, you could say, when it comes to the U.S. political system. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
Look,
something that's
there's
just a
no.
conspiracy theorist type because with the fact that he was escorted out of the building and wasn't allowed to say goodbye to the team, he was escorted out by security. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something new I hadn't seen. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see this off the back pages, as it's called, and in the front pages. There might be a little more to this. I wouldn't be surprised because, like you said, the timing, okay, fine. We've seen weirder football decisions being made. The aggressiveness with which he was fired, unless there was a humongous blow up in the dressing room after the game, which of course may have been the case. Uh, unless there was a humongous blow up. Also worth noting that they weren't on US soil, right? So maybe he decided he
Hmm.
was a little bit safer if he was. Like we are saying, of course, he has heritage from there, but I highly doubt there wasn't also some political undertone to that messaging, and we won't make comment one way or the other about that. But just to point out that I'm sure it played in, and whether or not that played into the firing is going to be very interesting. And I would not be surprised if it did. If there's even a whiff of truth to that, that Salah will be hammering that quite hard and making sure it's well publicized in the media.
Yeah. I wonder if they made him sign an NDA about the meeting and that he cannot speak about it. And most of the time when firings happen, that is the case.
Yeah. Well, look, if that's one thing I know, the labor laws in the US are a lot looser than they are over here, but I'm pretty sure you can't fire someone over to their political opinions. So if that's what I mean by if there's any whiff, this may escalate outside of a football story and into a job seekers type thing,
Yeah.
an
Uh,
employment issue.
yeah. Let's move on though. Let's have a little
Mm-hmm.
chat about. We're going to talk about Ravens. We'll move on to the Ravens in a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about the Cleveland Browns and the
Yeah.
continued cesspit that is going on up there in Ohio. Another tough day, another loss, disappointing loss, another underperformance by quarterback Deshaun Watson. The calls to drop him to the bench are getting louder and louder and louder. So much so that I don't know how much longer they can continue to ignore those calls. And where we just talked about the Jets with a quarterback versus head coach battle and who the owner goes with, I can see the same thing happening here in Cleveland. Does the
Mm-hmm.
owner want to lose all that money on the quarterback and make him play for that and lose the head coach, or does he want to side with the head coach? A head coach, I should also put in, that has brought them to the playoffs numerous times, that has turned this franchise around from being a joke to being an actual serious contender in the AFC. So that's something that really has to be looked at when it comes to ownership. If when they decide, or if they are going to decide, because maybe they may work it out. I don't foresee it happening, but if they do work it out, that which do they go for, the head coach or the quarterback?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of noise about Deshaun Watson at the moment, a lot. And I think it's quite interesting. I don't know a lot about the Browns. Like you said, a lot of people have been calling for him to be benched. He's not playing well. You definitely can't argue that. But I had a chance to watch the full game this Sunday, given who they were playing. And it struck me that while Watson certainly was not playing well, the offensive line, once again, it's a very similar situation to the Jets. The offensive line did not do themselves any favors. They had 12 men on defense twice in 3 plays in, I think, the third quarter. They're a mess. They don't really know. And that's what struck me is like the amount of clamor that's gone for Watson. And this is throughout, right? This is on Twitter. This is fans. This is pundits are even saying that Watson needs to go. Some of the major networks in the US calling for that this afternoon. And I'm kind of looking at it going like, yes, Watson has underperformed, but the offense as a whole really looked like it had no identity. In years past, Stefanski has really leaned on and run hard behind Chubb. And then last season, they found Ford as well. And they had that kind of 1-2 punch that a lot of teams really struggled to be able to contain and did a lot of damage. So for me, I think it's very interesting that the entire blame seems to be on Watson. But I think Stefanski, now that he lost Chubb, that's first of all a big piece for an offense to lose in general, especially the talented running back that he is. But he hasn't been able to establish an alternative reality, an alternative identity for this offense. And it's suffered. And it's suffered because Deshaun Watson hasn't played well, which has definitely got to do with the year and odd amount of time that he hasn't been. I saw the stat that this is only his 17th start last weekend, was his 17th start for the Browns. So look, that's really, really poor. They haven't had a lot of game time from him. Again, another similarity to the Jets, right? If he is to return to the standard that he showed back with the Texans, it's going to take some time. You can't miss that many reps and expect to jump back into it. But I think the offensive game has been really pulled apart by Chubb being missing. And it just doesn't look good. They had the famous clip of him walking off at the end of the second quarter when they could have gone for a 4th down play. Apparently that was because they had 12 men in the huddle. They went 0 for 12 on 3rd down in the game on Sunday. That's not necessarily a Deshaun Watson, right? 0 for 12 on 3rd downs. Sure, he's putting them in long yardage situations, but not all of those 12 were in long yardage. They couldn't run the ball for a 1st down either. So the offense, and that's where my point of view is coming from, is like the offense has failed to establish an identity, a personality beyond we're going to hammer you on the ground and then we're going to laser the ball over the top of your head when you get sucked down in the play action. And I think now that that's not available, and by the way, drops from absolutely everyone. Amari Cooper had some horrendous ones. Judy had some horrendous ones. These are massive wide receiver names. Judy had one in the end zone, hit him in the chest and go out. It was incredible. I haven't seen that kind of standard from names like that. That's usually your 3rd receiver, 4th receiver on the roster where you're going, ideally, you're not throwing it to him in the end zone, right? Find one of your big name stars. These are supposed to be the big name stars. So while there's plenty of blame to be laid at Deshaun Watson's feet, I think Stefanski is dodging a lot of heat because of the plaudits that he got over the last couple of years. I personally am not seeing the coaching side helping out a struggling offense either. So I think there's definitely 2 forces at play. I don't know what you've seen in your analysis so far this season of the Browns.
Yeah, it's limited in what I've seen. I've not gotten to probably watch as much as I would like of them.
No, you would not like to watch any of them. I'm telling you that.
But yeah, it's tough for a team that, performed as well as they did with the likes of, PJ Walker last year.
Yeah.
At times. And, I know, I don't see, I find it tough. is Deshaun Watson truly out of love with the game? And that's the question that a lot of people have come to. And you know, I don't um I don't look past what he's done. And I don't think anyone should. I think that should always be in the front of people's minds when it comes to Deshaun Watson and what he's done in the last couple of years and beyond, obviously. Um, but you know, if you're getting beaten down, you would fall out of love with the game too, from every angle. Um, and I think maybe he's just for me, it looks like he's just playing out his contract. And I don't
Mhm.
think he's going to sign another one. He's not. I think he'll retire then and then, and we won't see him again. And I wouldn't exactly hate that myself, seeing that. For a Browns point of view, I think they would love that too. I think they'd love to get it out of it sooner. I think, is it maybe he's playing badly on purpose so that he can be dropped or he can be released because he's guaranteed his money anyway. If he doesn't do any, if he's not called for anything or released for anything detrimental to the team where he can lose out on money, if he's doing it for performance, you can't lose your money for performance. So you know maybe he's doing that on purpose. He's just fed up. That's the conspiracy theory side of things. But I agree, on the defense side of things, the defense have played just as poorly as the offense, and I don't think it's spoken about enough. For a defense that has as many good players as it does, you've got obviously Miles Garrett, you've got, is it one of the Smiths, Preston or Zadarius Smith on the other side? Was it Koromoa, the linebacker who got a huge new contract in the last in the off season? I think that they have a really Jeff Swartz is the coordinator, or Jim Swartz, sorry, is the coordinator at DC. Has proven how good he is, and it's just underperformed. And I don't
Mhm.
know if the general poisoning of the team is affecting, like from the offense, is affecting the defense. Maybe because the defense are having such good weeks every week playing against that terrible offense. When they come up against a decent NFL offense, they don't know what to do. I don't know, but it's crying out for a blow it up, start it again. I think that's what it is. It's crying out for that. And I think that they should, and I think that they should do it with Kevin Stefanski. Let him let him continue to be the head coach. Let him, build a team. Let him get the quarterback that he wants. Um, for this season, I wouldn't even play. Um, I wouldn't even play Chubb for this season, considering the injury that he has. I wouldn't do it. I would I would say, look, listen, we do need you back, but we don't need you back that much where we're going to hurt you again. So look, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I don't. Do you have anything else to add to this before we move on?
Yeah, just quickly, the counter argument to that is Chubb. Obviously, you don't want him sitting on the bench too long, right? These guys need reps; they need to keep the body going, and that would be my concern, not bringing him in. I personally, as we are not big fans of Deshaun Watson on this show, I personally would have the league's most expensive tackle dummy just stay in all year. Just take 7-8 sacks a game like they had on Sunday. Why risk the national treasure that is Jameis Winston? Keep him around. He's your nice cheap option at quarterback next year. You might even have a high draft pick. Why not tank with the world's most expensive tanker?
Yeah, true. That's true. I'd go for that too. It'd be a lot more entertaining at
Although
least.
the Browns, isn't it the Browns that have the worst history with first round draft picks we've ever seen? There's like
Yeah,
0 out of the last 10 have stayed past 3 years or something ridiculous like
yeah.
that.
Well, I think like the one name that always comes to me um is the what was his name? Deshaun Kaiser. Remember they had him just absolutely awful. Awful, awful. Well, the thing is, they've had first round quarterbacks, and because quarterbacks have left and done quite well. Look at Baker Mayfield. Had a very good year, a very good career now, having a great year with Tampa Bay. Huge contract. Um, so look, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see when it comes to this. But let's move on. To you want to actually have a chat about the Ravens, Sean. So let's have a let's have a chat about the Ravens. What are you seeing about the Ravens? What do you like? What do you dislike?
What I like about the Ravens this year is, like every year, they're kind of all over the place. They're a roller coaster to watch. It seems to be, if they get off the rhythm at all, they're shaky, especially at the start of the season. And it's really been throwing them around. They had an excellent game against the Bengals last game. Lamar Jackson, though, put the ball on the ground at a crucial time. He's a constant ball of energy. He's going to turn the game on its head no matter what. The problem is, when is he going to turn it on its head for your team, and when is he going to do a fumble, uh, a sack, something crazy that ends up getting yards for the opposition? That's what I've been finding most interesting. I think the Ravens and the Bills, for me, are huge question marks right now about how far they can go. And what I like about the Ravens is they're starting to progress, right? All those running backs have moved on that they famously had, but now they've brought in Derrick Henry, right? Now the run game looks totally different than it has maybe the last 3 or 4 years, where it's been run by committee. You don't need Lamar Jackson to go ahead and get 50 yards on the ground, because you can just hand it off to Derrick Henry and off he goes. On the tight end side of things, a lot of fantasy football people are disappointed this season. Mark Andrews seems to be at most a blocking tight end at the moment. You got Isaiah Likely, and I don't remember the name of what did he call himself? The big fat white guy that ran down the middle of the field. I think his name is
Oh, Pat
Kuchar.
Ricard.
No,
Pat
no, no.
Ricard.
It's the third string tight end that they have. He caught a big 40-yard ball
Oh,
down the
Kovar, was it? Is that his
Kovar.
name? Something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've been super interesting. I think they need more dynamism at wide receiver. I think that's been the criticism of the Ravens the last few games. But man, I love their defense. Hamilton flies around the place, makes tackles. He's one of my favorite players to watch on defense at the moment. So, but what I like is they're vulnerable, right? What did Joe Burrow put up, like 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns on him the last game, and only for a botched hold they could have lost that game. So that for me is why I wanted to bring up the Ravens. I'd be keen to get your opinion as well. Quite
Mhm.
exciting, not a stable, not that nice, consistent performance we were saying at the top of the show you like to see when it's your fan base. But from a watching perspective, it's really interesting how they're gonna which Ravens is gonna turn up in each game, and whether or not they can hit the ground running quickly, or if it's going to be a struggle, because they can be held, if you get the right defense on them, they can be held to low scoring. So that's quite interesting. What have you found? Have you had any thoughts on the Ravens that they stood out to you at all, or is it just me?
I think for me, it's. I think the Ravens are in this territory at the moment where they are a great regular season team, something similar to what Miami have been the last few years, a great regular season team. When it comes to the playoffs, they end up just finding a way to get in their own way and messing things up. Um, they've always, I think, since Lamar has come in, they've always started seasons on fire. But I don't know if it's teams figuring out. I don't know if it's like tiredness. I don't know if I don't know what goes on. But the offensive production goes down as the year goes on. Which is like this part of the season is great for fancy owners of Lamar Jackson, thrown for 4 touchdowns, 348 in the air, another 55 on the ground. You know, for those that would be worried that Derrick Henry would take production off him, and not at all when it comes to the rushing side of things. But this is the thing, this sort of stuff I expect out of the Ravens. The defensive output I have not expected. They have been quite poor when it comes to their defense this year. Considering the points that they're allowing, okay, they allow 27 points to the Chiefs. That's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. They they allowed 26 points to Gardner Minshew and the Raiders. They conceded 25 points to the Cowboys. Okay, they shut out the Bills in a very good defensive performance, only conceding 10 points, but 38 points to a Bengals offense last week as well, too. So I think that, I know it's a new defensive coordinator, of course, with Mike McDonald in Seattle, but there's just been some things that just have not worked. on the defensive side of things. The offensive side is great, but this is the issue that I'm going to have. What's going to happen now when this offense production, when or if it might continue, if this offensive production slows down, which it has a tendency to do, is the defense now going to be able to step up in these games and hold a team to less than 20 points? They've only done it once this year. And like I said, that was against the Bills, who are a good side, a very good side, so which is a very good thing to do. But are they going to do it when it comes up against, if they come up against the Chiefs again? You know, if they come up against the Texans, you know, in the playoffs. I'm trying to think of other AFC sides that are playing well this year. It's actually quite hard to think of any other ones.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question as a kind of a follow up. I think, and people are probably sick of us talking about our teams, but we haven't mentioned the Seahawks at all this game, and I haven't been on last two shows, right? So, but it is interesting now that they're, as you said, that defensively they're not playing very well, the Ravens, but on the running side of things, they are the second defense in the league in terms of rush yards allowed per game, withholding those. Now they're playing Washington, who are in the top 5 in terms of rush yards per game. So that's going to be interesting to see which of those dams breaks on Sunday. I think that'll be a good indication. I think definitely you've got to lean towards the Ravens on this one. But I think it'll be a good indication of that. And going forward, like you said, it'll be then about the consistency in the offensive outputs. But what I was going to ask you is, aside from, let's take the two obvious, right? The Chiefs are gone, and you can argue they're not playing well this season, but that's fine. They're 5-0 and they're defending champs back to back. So we'll take them out and we'll take the Vikings out on the NFC side. And you said the Ravens are a little bit dodgy on the playoffs, but I personally don't see anyone that's set up to kind of cruise guaranteed NFC championship game, AFC championship game. So in your mind, who are those, let's call it Chiefs in the AFC, Vikings in the NFC? What's the other half of those two championships looking like for you right now? It's kind of on the spot, but who's been standing out to you?
If I had to say, if it wasn't going to be the Ravens, I'd say the Texans.
Yep, I think I'm with you
I'd
on
say the
that one.
Texans on that side. And then in the NFC, for me, I think even before they beat the Seahawks, I'd say the Lions are the best team in the NFC, and I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah, I find it hard to push against you really on those ones, to be honest. Obviously, with the Vikings taken out of it, I like Green Bay. I think they can play consistent football now that Jordan Love is coming back. I think their record took a hit because of them. So just for the interest of adding some color to it, I'll take Green Bay over the Lions. But aside from that, yeah, I'm with you. I think on the AFC side, I think the Houston Texans look the best outfit at the moment. Maybe the Bills, but they've looked raggedy. Maybe the Baltimore Ravens, but they've looked raggedy. So that's what I mean. It's not been the cleanest season of American football, but it's certainly more interesting and more wide open at the playoff level than it has been in previous seasons, I would argue.
Absolutely. I wouldn't even put the Vikings maybe in there. I think there's a dip coming for them for sure. And I wouldn't necessarily be, booking my ticket to the NFC Championship if I was a Vikings fan. I still think there's a lot of twists and turns to happen.
Yeah, like I said at the top, they don't look unbeatable, right? Even if they played really well, they don't give you that aura. They don't give you that indestructibility. But anyway, they've been playing really well, and if they can keep it going, again, it's defensive, right? They've got an incredible amount of offensive output. So if they can keep the defense playing at a high level, I think they have a great chance, but certainly more challenges to go with only 5 games down.
Well, considering they only scored 2 field goals in the whole second half against the Jets is a concern. They didn't, I think it was the same the week before. Let me just have a quick look here. When they played the Packers, they only scored 3 points in the second half against the Packers after being up 28-0 at halftime. So second half scoring seems to be a problem. Maybe when opposition defenses are catching on to their schemes and making adjustments, the offense are not making them set adjustments themselves to counteract them to make sure that they can keep their offense moving as well. So, there is some things there. There's a little trend there now that we're going to have to keep an eye on now. I know they're on bye this week, so we won't see it this week. It'll be the following week. And who did they play the following week? I know it's a big game actually. It's the Lions that they play, which is going to be a huge test for them, a huge
Yep.
marker to see if they are, in fact, in Fion's own words, if they are on the fraud list or not. So this game will be a good indication to see if they're for real, if they're contenders or pretenders.
Yeah, I think you're being a little bit harsh. I don't think it necessarily tells us that. And actually, if I'm a Vikings fan, I kind of want to lose that game a little bit. One, it's against a good team. That's fine. You write it off. Two good teams playing against each other should kind of split a series, right? And then it gives you that right. Unbeaten is gone. 5-0. We're 5-1 now, right? Let's just get down to it. We're in a season. We're not going to have it all our own way. We're going to lose a couple of games. We'll win a couple of games that are tight. We're probably going to lose a couple of games that we maybe should have won. And then we're going to have some head-to-heads. I think if they come in with 3-4 losses, they'll be in good shape. So I don't know if this game is necessarily contenders, pretenders, but it certainly sets out their style. If they beat the Lions, all of a sudden they have a lot of momentum, more than I think just 5-0 alone, based on the schedule that they've passed so far, would give them. I think this is it's a statement win if they do beat the Lions for sure. And if they look good doing it, my God, I think that puts them as clear runaway favorites in the NFC.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah, okay, I'll go with you on that. I say losing the game is not the end of the world, but winning the game definitely puts you up there in that stratosphere. There, you're going to put,
Absolutely.
in my eyes, going to put up there with the Lions and the 49ers as those three teams. And the Packers, I guess, say are just there too, that are going to vie for the NFC Championship. Absolutely crazy that like three NFC North teams are looking like NFC contenders,
Yep.
considering where they've been the last few years as well. But I think that's a good place to wrap this up. Any other
Yep.
business before we call it a day?
No, I've put together. It's been a few weeks since my fraud list. So I've put together a fraud list. We'll release it over the
Mhm.
socials. Keep your eye out for that as the week goes on, guys. Please do, if you are watching the show, do jump in the comments. We love to have it. It doesn't happen very often, but we do love to have a bit of banter back and forwards whenever we can. You'll see it as well on YouTube if you're watching. If you drop some comments, as long as it's clean, it's not insulting anybody, we'll throw them up and we'll incorporate them into the conversation. So we're here to have a bit of crack. If you guys are there and want to engage with us, please do. And we'll probably talk about, I don't know, we'll probably talk about the fraud list maybe next week on the show if we get some good feedback. Getting into now where frauds start to be noticed. You know what I mean? Now you've got your 5 games in, you are who you look like, unless you're a fraud. And I think that's going to be driving my conversation, right? I'm trying to spot the guys that are doing better than they actually are, if that makes sense. Not necessarily a Bills that are 3-2 and they're having an up and down season. That's a different thing. Fraud is, like you argued, Dara, are the Vikings frauds? Are they way too good? Is 5-0 way too high to have them? Are they about to come crashing down to reality? That's what we'll be trying to do. So anyone sees it on the social medias, wants to understand or have a bit of chat, or maybe has their own fraud list going, do drop them in and we'll have a chat about them.
Yeah. And also, we should say as well, we will get the best time of the year next week, and that's
Yep.
Fionn breaking down a Russell Wilson performance because he's a full participant in Steelers training. So there is a chance that he may, in fact, be playing this week.
It
So we
came
might see Steeler Russ.
It came at a great week for him as well. Justin Fields had
yeah,
probably his worst performance so far this week. He looked pretty limited on offense this weekend. So good chance for Russ to start. I am disappointed. I was kind of a little bit of a Fields backer, to be honest. I knew he was limited, right? That's what he is. That's clear. But that doesn't mean you can't be very effective in the right style of offense. So I'm disappointed for him. I think ultimately, yeah, I suspect we're going to see a Russell Wilson cliff dive next Sunday, and I'm excited to break it down.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Like Fionn says, so make sure you follow us on the socials at UnderCenterPod on Instagram, and on Twitter or X or whatever it's being called these days. If you are watching this on YouTube and you haven't already, please like this video and hit the subscribe button as well while you're there too. We are on the march to get up to 1,000 subscribers. We are teetering around 600 at the moment. Let's try before the end of the season. Let's try to get up to 1,000. That'd be a nice, lovely number to get to. We appreciate every single one of you guys that do either watch, listen, or subscribe, like anything that you do, any sort of contribution you make towards the show. We really appreciate it. It makes it validates it, saying that at least we're talking some sense, not absolute total bollocks.
Or
So
just
we
bollocks
appreciate.
people like to listen to go to sleep. Some white noise in the
Well,
background, I think.
look, listen, a listen is a listen. That's all I care about.
If these Dublin accents don't put you asleep, nothing will, huh?
Perfect. Listen, Fionn, as always, thank you, buddy.
Sound as well.
And we'll be back again, like I said, next week. We'll review Russell Wilson's potential start as a Pittsburgh Steeler, and of course, all the other games too, which includes that pesky Thursday night football, which I'm very upset that I can't stay awake for, between the 49ers and the Seahawks. By that stage, anyway, I'm sure it'll be old news. So if the Seahawks do have a bad performance, we won't have to talk about it. It'll be great.
Exactly.
But until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.